Hello, I'm Nancy Reynolds, Stampin' with Nutsy. I'm on Facebook and blog. I have a blog at stampinwithnutsy.blogspot.com, and I thank you for joining me today to talk about and show you a couple cards actually, using the most beautiful suite in designer series paper. It's just amazing. It's in the January to June mini catalog, and it's the Hydrangea Hill. I wanted to order the suite collection and get it all, but I ordered a little bit late and a couple of things were out of stock, so I'll have to get those another time. But the cards that are made beautiful are just beautiful. It uses colors that I absolutely love. It comes as a bundle, so you get a 10% savings on the stamp set and the dies. I'm on pages 18 through 20 in the catalog. It's got some acetate, which is beautiful. This is what I didn't get. I didn't get the ribbon and I didn't get the pastel pearls. I'm hoping to get them in the future. And I think the best thing about the suite is the designer series paper. It is so beautiful. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can hold it up to the camera. This is the one we're going to be using today. It's got the flowers on one end, then sky in the middle, and then flowers on the other end. So it makes 6 card fronts for a 12 by 12 piece. And I've got some extra of the blue that I can stamp sentiments on other cards. Let me just show you what I put together. I put together a little sample of all the stamps. It's got a lot of messages, sentiment stamps. They were a little small for what I wanted today, so I didn't use the stamp set. It's very pretty. It's got outline stamps, but it also has stamps that fill in the color for you. So, and then the dies are all equally as beautiful. This one, I don't think you can see. It embosses the leaves, the petals on the little leaves, like these little leaves, into the cardstock. So it's very, very pretty. It is a lovely set. And as I said, I think I'm in love with the designer series paper. It is just gorgeous. This is the one we're using today. The back side. I used that on my other video just a few days ago. And I just think, I can't even say enough about it being pretty. And look at all of those colors. It's got some of my favorite colors. Gorgeous grape, Highland heather, misty moonlight, mossy meadow, old olive, rococo rose, and seaside spray. All of them are just, it's my color palette. What can I tell you? So I'm excited about the card. I'm excited about the paper. I wanted to highlight the DSP because I think having the flowers on the bottom and the sky on the top is just pretty, and it's also somewhat unique. We've had other papers like it in the past, but it's not often we get something like this. So the first one I want to do is the Thinking of You card. Very simple. We're going to do one of my favorite techniques. We're going to stamp right on the designer series paper. So I'm going to set that aside and pull out my Stamparatus. I borrowed a sentiment because as I said, I wanted a little larger sentiment. And so I got out my Rooted in Nature set and the Thinking of You stamp. And I put it on my Stamparatus. You will notice that my grid paper that I keep in here is got marks on it. And that is so I know where I can put a card front and it'll be in exactly the right spot. So I'm going to hold it down with my magnets. Remember, these are very strong magnets and you don't want them to touch. They have been known to crack and break. There's also a really good spot if you want to keep one separate. On the bottom of the Stamparatus, there's a place to put your magnets. I find the disadvantage to that is I often put my Stamparatus back on my washer and dryer because my craft room is also my laundry room. So I occasionally am hunting for a magnet which is stuck to my dryer. Here we are. I'm going to ink up my stamp with the Tuxedo Black Memento ink. think I might have that a little high for some reason. Let me just move it down just a hair. Oh, I see. I lined it up at the bottom. Usually my card front is a little bit bigger. But designer series paper is perfect to cut it 4 by 5 1/4. So here we are. We've got our thinking of you. The advantage of the Stamparatus is that if it's not quite dark enough, you can ink up, stamp again in the same place. And if you actually rub it with the palm of your hand or the heel of your hand, give it a little massage, that is one of the strongest parts of your hand, so it gets a good coverage. So here we are. We are ready to go. I'm going to set this aside and I will wash it later, I promise. I have card base of Seaside Spray, which is 11 inches by 4 1/4, scored at 5 1/2 and folded. So we have a little tent type card. I have some basic black. Oh, let me do a little reinforce of that score line. Basic black, which is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And I am going to adhere my card base onto the front of that. So let me grab my seal and my silicone mat. Now, you know, the advantage of the silicone mat is if you do go get a little bit extra on it or off of it, it doesn't stick. Glue, hot glue, the tape runners. There we are. Now, one of the things I want to do is get this on, and then we're going to put some ribbon on. Let's see. That looks about right. I have the Seaside Spray metallic red ribbon. And what I want to do is, I am bow challenged. I know that some people can just do a bow without even thinking. I am not one of them. So I'm going to decide where I want it. I think maybe right about there. Hook an end, adhere it right into the glue or the tape on the back. I'm going to take my ribbon scissors, and I know they're ribbon scissors because they have ribbon on them. That's how I tell them apart. I try not to get so busy and so preoccupied that I use my ribbon scissors on paper. I won't say I'm 100% successful, but I do try hard on that with that. We've got our ribbon on it. Oh, I didn't cover my ink up. There was an accident waiting to happen. I'm going to grab some dimensionals and I'm going to put them on. Now you might notice that my dimensionals, it doesn't look like a full sheet because it's not clear out to the edge. But I take, and sometimes you need little pieces or bigger pieces or specific shapes. And so I take and I clip my edges and I use all of my dimensionals. Because after all, we paid for them. We should use them all. I want this to hold up really well in the mail. So I think, well, that's a generous amount of dimensionals. I'll take off the little backings. And everybody has stories about where these little backings show up. I do make an effort to put them in the garbage can when I take them off because my dogs love to track them around the house. It's such fun finding them in interesting places. Sometimes I wear them and they drop off. I found them in my closet the other day. Let's see. Let me flatten this out a little bit. Get this lined up. And I think that looks pretty good. Now, one of my little cheats, because I like bows, I just don't make them well. I have a little bow jig, and I made myself a little bow. Just gonna get my take your pick tool. Let's see. I think I'm gonna need to tighten this up. There we are. Take my take your pick tool, take a glue dot, put it in the middle under the bow here, the ribbon. And I'm also going to put one on the back of this for the bow. And then put it down on top of the, so now my ribbon is secure, my bow is secure. There's a little sticky stuff, I just kind of poke it under with the take your pick tool. And I'm going to put on some bling. I have the rhinestone gems, which I think I will just use. I'm using the putty end of the take your pick tool. Normally I have a cover on it, but I knew I was going to be using, so that keeps it from drying out. I am taking, because it needed just something more, just a little bit more bling. So I'm taking my Wink of Stella pen, which is basically a glitter pen. It's a non-messy glitter pen though. There's a plus. And I'm just going to color in, what looks like it might be the middle of some of the flowers, so that there's just a touch of glitter. Not over much. Although, I gotta tell you, my first impulse is to cover every single flower totally with glitter, because I like glitter. It's one of my favorite things. You probably can't see that, but it's got just a little dots of glitter all over the flowers. For the inside, I'm doing really, really super simple. I cut a 3/4 inch strip of the Designer Series paper. Just gonna run some glue down it. Put it on a piece of white paper, cut at 4 by 5 1/4. I kind of like a little piece of white at the side. With seal, you can pick it up and adjust it just a little bit. It's not as much as if you were using multi-purpose glue, but it's got a little adjustability. And there we are. Oh, see, now you can see I made a mess. Put a little. Did you notice with the seal that I roll it on and then I tip it back and take it off straight up? That's because I want the adhesive to break up in here so that when I put it down to run it, the next time I won't have to advance it manually, which means I don't get this little bit of glue on my finger, which I kind of like, not having glue on my fingers. All right, here we are. And there we have a card. That was really quick. So I was thinking, since I knew that was going to be kind of quick, I thought, how could I step the card up just a little bit? Same basic card, but make it just a little bit more. So I took this, I used my So Sentimental dies, So Sentimental stamp set, because again, I wanted a larger sentiment. I can't thank you enough. And I used the Stitch So Sweetly dies. So the first thing I did after I cut my 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 piece of silver foil is I took the die and I cut it out the middle. It's a good way to conserve paper. You can do it in any one that you're going to do a background on, because the Designer Series paper over the top of it totally hides that there's a hole in the middle of the back. I like that. And so I've got my background for the sentiment. And then I took some black and I stamped the sentiment using Versamark ink, which is a very gluey ink. Doesn't have any color, but then I put white embossing powder over it and I heat embossed it. And if you haven't heat embossed, it's just, I've been doing this now for many years and it's still magic because it just melts the plastic little granules or whatever it's made of, and it gets shiny and it looks different. It's just, what can I say? It takes very little to excite me, and I'm really not a very scientific person. So I'm sure that someone who is would have a perfect explanation. I do not. But it's magic. That's my explanation. I am going to adhere the sentiment onto my silver foil and set it aside for a minute while I adhere the Designer Series paper to the foil. Let's see. That looks about right. Generally speaking, because it's cut just an 1/8 of an inch bigger in each direction, if you line up the top and the sides, the bottom is going to take care of itself. So that's always a nice thing. I decided to use Misty Moonlight as my paper, as my card base. And I'm doing the inside exactly the same way I did the other one. I'm just going to adhere this strip of Designer Series paper to the white cardstock that I cut at 4 by 5 1/4 inches. And I'm going to adhere that into the inside of my card. The other day I pulled out some white paper and I had run something off on it from my printer, and it wasn't right, so I needed to redo it, and found that I was able to use that whole piece of paper for things like this because it's all hidden. Now, the one thing I did the ribbon a little differently. I went to the metallic mesh ribbon, which is, I think, my new favorite this year. I did it almost the same way as I did the other. I put some steel. Oh, I didn't break it correctly. So let me just advance it and get rid of that little bit of glue on my finger now. Tip. Sometimes I have to remind myself that I really need to tip it. And I'm working on the silicone mat again because the glue doesn't stick to it. And I'm going to want to set it down for a minute and be able to pick it up without it being glued down. I'm going to cut myself a piece of the mesh, maybe being a little bit generous. And I put it on about the middle of the card. I'll pick this up and hold it in place with the tape on the back. So there we are. Oh, I guess I really don't need to do that. I am now going to put it on my card, and I am going to do it flat because I'm going to, in this case, I've got the sentiment that I want to raise up, and then we'll have the bow on the front too. Did I say bow? I did say bow. Let me show you what I'm going to do. See, it makes such a pretty bow. I just love this stuff. I am going to take a length, a little longer, I hope, than the first one I took. Cut it, and I'm just going to slip it underneath what I've just adhered. and tie a knot. And then I'm going to turn it upside down because for whatever reason, bows tie better upside down. It's easier to get them in place correctly. I don't know why. No, I didn't. I could have cut it a little bit longer. But you want to fuss with it just a little bit to get it all full and pretty. There we are. Turn it back this way. And what I do, again, I take a glue dot. I keep moving them. And I'm going to put it right under the middle because I want it to stay put. I don't want anything squiggling around on me. I'm going to take more dimensionals, put them on the back of the sentiment. And I will use the rest of those edges. Don't ever throw away the edges. They are wonderful. You have paid money for those, so they are to be used. Pop this on. Pretty. And then I'll do the same thing I did with the other one, the first card, as I'm going to take my Take Your Pick tool, using the putty end, and just put some bling on it, some of the rhinestone gems. I'm going to grab my Wink of Stella, and yes, this probably would have been a lot easier if I had done the Wink of Stella before I did the ribbon and put it on. This is the third card I've done now to do this way. And it's the first time I have thought that I could have been a bit more efficient and made it easier on myself by doing this first. But it works this way too. You just kind of have to go in the ribbon a little bit. So I tried to put it on the darker spots. So we have two cards today. We have the Thank You card, and we have the Thinking of You card. I hope you've enjoyed watching and you've gotten some ideas and you're inspired to play with this set of designer series paper. I know I'm going to be playing with it some more. And I am Stampin' with Nutsy. I'm Nancy Reynolds, actually, at Stampin' with Nutsy on Facebook and at blogspot.com. And I hope you'll visit me. And thank you so much for taking your time and spending it with me to make these cards. Bye-bye.